What is it? It's the DNA test on Emily Sim's blood.
What does it say?
It says definitively that Melissa is not Emily's mother. But that they found striking genetic similarities between Emily and Melissa, so many that they ran a test against another sample that they already had. What sample?
What are you trying to say?
According to this, I am Emily's mother.
Ho ho! How are you doing, Daniel Checkley?
That was your big plan.
That was my big plan, yeah.
for a Christmas intro.
Yeah.
Ho ho, how are you doing?
Yeah. How is it going? How is it going?
It's not going too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Welcome to Most Unwanted, an X-Files podcast. This is our Christmas special. If the jingle bells at the beginning didn't give it away.
Well, first of two Christmas specials.
It is, yeah. This is our Christmas two-parter. A weird Christmas two-parter, I'm going to be honest.
Well, this is the problem. Because we're watching these episodes for the first time, we can't guess what the episode's going to be like. I fully expected a remake of A Christmas Carol. I fully expected, like, a Ghost of Christmas Past type of thing. We didn't get that.
No, it's, yeah, the title on its own is... It's quite misleading, I think, but I guess we'll get to all this later on. But first, how about some Christmassy questions with the boys?
Questions with the boys. Questions with the boys. After the chasing sunset, one of life's simple joys. Questions with the boys.
So, in the spirit of how hastily put together my notes are on this episode, a peek behind the curtain, guys. I forgot we recorded today and had to cram this in quite quickly before we started recording.
Even though I literally got a calendar out in the last time we recorded and showed you which days we were recording.
Sometimes my brain just goes, no, that can't be right. It's this. It's definitely this. And then I look at it and go, no, I'm wrong.
To be fair, you've had a busy couple of weeks at work, so I think we can forgive you that one.
But in the spirit of that, my first question this week, have you ever left something till the last minute and nearly paid for it?
You know what? I don't. Nothing jumps to mind straight away, but that's because it's one of my fears. I've got this weird thing where if ever I'm going away on a holiday or like a trip or something like that, guaranteed the week before, I will have nightmares about going to this place and then realizing I'd forgot to take something. And usually it's such innocuous things, like it's a camera, and like if I really forgot my camera, I'd be like, oh, never mind, I'll use my phone or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't be the end of the world, but in the dream or in the nightmare, it is the end of the world, and it feels like, you know, when you get that sort of panic and despair in the pit of your stomach, that's the way it feels in my dream. And so I tend to like do a lot of lists and make sure I don't leave things to the last second. So yeah, I can't really think of anything apart from maybe exams. Like I'm a bugger for last minute revision.
See,
but I haven't done exams for ages. So
when I wrote this question, immediately I thought you were going to tell the story of how you nearly missed the plane because you were waiting at the wrong terminal or something like that. I can't remember.
Oh, it was not the wrong terminal. I was having a Burger King.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, but that's just laziness. That's just me assuming the plane won't leave without me.
And then you get, like, final call.
Yeah, and then we got the final call and we realised the, what do you call it? What do you call it where the plane takes off from?
The runway.
Well, yeah, wherever we got the plane was, like, 2 miles out the way on the other end of the airport. So that was a long run through the airport.
Yeah. I don't think I was there for that one. I remember hearing about it. For me, the only thing that springs to mind was before your stag do last year, was it? It was last year, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It feels about 10 years ago now.
It does. It really does.
Basically, we were getting like the stag do t-shirts, and it wasn't because we'd left it till the last minute. I don't think it was. There was like some kind of screw up or something like that, and basically we had to. It was cutting it to the last day, like the day before we were going. I was unsure whether they'd be delivered, and I was out, and something else was happening, so I had to like leave a note for the postie to chuck it over the back fence if it's time for or something like that. To which he did. So I still owe him a pint for that, but I don't really see him that often these days. But yeah, nothing major.
Yeah, I think we're quite well organised considering how. All over the place we usually are. I think we like to be relaxed about it, but not too relaxed.
Yeah, I was worse in the past. I've got better with age.
Yeah, age definitely helps. I think you know what I think. It basically comes down to not worrying too much about something. So for now, if I, for example, if I forget something. Back when I was younger, maybe it would have been the end of the world. But now I'm just like, we'll get on with it. We'll find a way around.
As long as it's not like your passport or something like that, then yeah.
Then it's an issue.
And secondly, a bit of a lighter question. What's your favourite Christmas song? I feel like I've covered this somewhere before, but I'm asking it again because I can't remember if I have.
I feel like we definitely have.
Yeah.
Okay, but regardless, my favourite Christmas song, I have 2.
All right.
I'm a big fan of Elton John's Step Into Christmas.
Yeah, that's Tasha's favourite.
Yeah, I like the classics, to be honest with you. But what I will say is this, and people are going to give me abuse for this, I can tell.
Okay.
I think the best Christmas song is Kelly Clarkson's Underneath the Tree.
It is a banger, to be fair.
It's not traditionally in the like top 10 list, but I just think it gets me in the mood. It's a good upbeat sort of. I just think it's great. I really do enjoy that song. What about yourself?
I think I always go. I think I've mentioned now. I'm actually saying mine. I'm pretty sure I have asked this question before because mine's Paul McCartney. Wonderful Christmas Time.
Yeah. Again, another classic.
Yeah.
I think again it's one of those things. Maybe this is an age thing, but I used to really hate like the slow Christmas songs, like Driving Home for Christmas and stuff like that. And so, you know what, I say hate, but that's not the case. I used to like them, but it never used to be on the top of my list. I wouldn't be the one I'd choose. But as I've got older, I've started to grow a bit of a fondness for the slower, more emotional Christmas songs. I really like them.
See, I don't mind that one. The only ones that are sort of I'm not big fans of is there's one by Mud, which annoys me because I always think it's Elvis, but it's not. It's Mud. That's the main reason for that. And controversially, the David Bowie, Bing Crosby one, I'm not a big fan. Not a big fan of that one.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Again, it's not one you put on for a party, is it?
No, it's very, very downbeat.
Yeah. It's something you put on whilst you're decorating your tree.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it for questions for the boys this week. Shall we just get into this episode? I don't think I have a Christmas carol-y segue.
Oh,
let's go and watch the episode of our future past. Days of Future Past.
It's not X-Men.
So this is episode 6 of season 5, titled Christmas Carol. It was directed by Peter Markle, which I've not seen that name before. That seems new.
Yeah, I don't recognise it.
This is where long-time fans will say, no, he's directed 4 last season. It was written by Vince Gilligan, John Shaban, and Frank Spotnitz, so a joint writing credit there. Original air date was December the 7th, 1997. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into the episode. We start off with it's quite an interesting start because it doesn't have that usual X-Files start, really. There's not like a plot hook at the beginning to sort of get you into it. It's just it starts at like the part after the credits, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we see Scully and her mom basically go to Bill's house, Party Bill, as I like to call him.
He's becoming less and less party by the episode.
Yeah, he has become very. I mean, knowing that he lives on a naval base or a naval station or whatever it is, he's probably very military man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of structure to him.
I just wish we could go back to the old wisecracking Bill. I really do. And now he's doubting everything, and he's a bit of a naysayer. I don't know.
It's this interaction with Mulder, I'm sure.
He's got a proper rivalry with Mulder, hasn't he?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, Party Time Bill. We find out he's married. I think he does mention this, but he's married, and his wife Tara is expecting their first child. So they're sort of spending Christmas with the Mulders. Sorry, with the Scullys. I think most of the Mulders are dead, aren't they?
This is a Christmas episode, Luke.
Sorry. I'll put some jingle bells over that bit just to make it a bit more Christmassy. Oh, God. So, not long after they've arrived, the phone rings and we get basically Scully answers the call. And on the other end is someone saying that she needs your help. Now, I didn't pick up who this was at the time, but it's implied that this person is Scully's sister.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to pick this up at this point, or at least I didn't get that from it. All you get is Scully's sort of shocked look, and you assume that it's something that means something to her.
Yeah. Or maybe the voice was similar, or again, if you've watched this enough, you probably do recognise Melissa's voice, but yeah, it's been a long time since I heard her speak, so I didn't pick up any.
No, and even when this first aired, like, you've only seen Melissa in 1, maybe 2 episodes. So I doubt it was intended for you to pick it up on this point.
And that was like series 2, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
So this sort of unnerves Scully, and she gets a trace on the call and finds out that it was made from the Sims residence, or the Sim residence. She travels to the actual crime scene, or we find out it's a crime scene. This was my first hint that, is this going to be a Mulderless episode? And I mean, not entirely.
He certainly makes an appearance.
He makes an appearance, which we'll get to. But yeah, we find this is a crime scene. She meets with Detective John Cassidy. I don't know how you pronounce his last name.
No idea.
Yeah. But she goes in and finds that basically there's a dead woman of an apparent suicide, and this is Mrs. Roberta Sim.
Quite a shocking scene, I thought, and this is the first moment where I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad we saved this for our Christmas episode."
Yeah, it's very Christmassy. Again, more jingle bells needed, maybe, but I don't know. It's very dark and not what I was expecting at all. I thought this was going to be very maybe long-time fans were like, "Why are you waiting?" Like,
but there are light episodes of the X-Files, and with the title, this is on me. This is on me, people. That's all I'm trying to say. Is because with the title, I thought we was going to get a little sort of quite jovial, quite light-hearted episode where it's a X-Files-y take on the Christmas Carol story. That's what I assumed. I was wrong. And now we're talking about suicide over Christmas. And I don't know, it's not ideal. Let's just say that.
Which apparently, according to the detective, is very common, which I didn't know, and is very sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
God, this feels incredibly grim.
What have we done?
Yeah. We'll have to find some way to lighten the end of this episode, maybe.
Mulder is still a shining light right now, so we get to that. When we get to that scene, that'll be much better.
So later on, Scully's sort of keeping an eye on the husband of the victim, named Marshall, and we also find out that they've got a 3-year-old daughter called Emily. Scully sort of observing, I can't say the word, observing this girl, and I don't know why, but she sort of has this sort of look about her, when she sort of recognizes this little girl.
Yeah, and I think the camera work here shows that there's an importance to this scene. I think they do a really good job in this episode as a whole, to be honest, of laying the groundwork without specifically giving you any hint as to what's happening, and nothing more so than the final reveal at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But even with this, obviously, I'm going to jump ahead, but it turns out to be a massive lookalike of her sister when she was that age.
Yeah.
But that never gets hinted at. All the camera work does is lays the groundwork of remember this face.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't even, later on in the episode, it doesn't even sort of hit you over the head with it. You get to see this picture of Scully's sister as a child, and it doesn't immediately say, oh, look how similar these two children look. It lets you figure it out, and in your head you're going, God, is that the same girl as... it lets you figure it out as you're going along.
Especially the flashback scenes where you're like, is that the same actor?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this episode as a whole does a really good job of that.
Yeah.
It constantly lets you figure it out, and then it makes you feel... It makes you feel like you're following the story, but you don't feel like you actually know what's going on until it's revealed.
Yeah.
I like that. I thought they did a really good job of the mystery of it.
The detective basically tells Scully that the phone call came from in the house, and it was made from this residence to Bill's house. But there's no sign of an outgoing call at all. So it's like basically there's only an incoming call from that line. And it also says the phone was off the hook for 3 hours. So there's no way they could have made this call.
Yeah.
So again, this sort of mystery of who called Scully, which we basically don't know even till the end of the episode.
No, it feels more like you don't even know. I mean, she's definitely getting the calls because, as I say, the call records are backing it up, and people in her family are answering the calls and giving her the calls throughout the episode. Yeah. So it's just where these calls are coming from.
I think it's at this point where she makes a call to Mulder, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Just to sort of let him in on what's happening or what's going on. And it's funny because this isn't in the actual synopsis of the episode, and I understand why. Because we basically get a shot of Mulder running in this strange-looking headgear. It looks like a sock on his head. I've never seen this before.
It's a nightcap.
Is it a nightcap? Why is he running in a nightcap? I don't understand.
Because he's Scrooge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's the one Christmas Carol reference in this entire episode.
Right, and I missed it. I didn't get it.
I'm sorry. So, you watched an episode entitled A Christmas Carol, and your first go to was, why has he got a sock on his head?
Yeah, I had no idea. I thought this was some kind of funky running headgear. I was like, this is... Well,
to be fair, I could be wrong, but it definitely looked like a nightcap to me.
I mean, yeah, it might be. I don't know. I just love this scene as they're like, well, we can't have him not in the episode at all. So they must have filmed this cutaway of him just running in, not being able to hear his phone, and then hanging up.
Yeah.
Which, just leave him out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I like this. I thought this was funny.
So yeah, we'll go with that. It's a nightcap. And he goes running around the town like Wee Willie Winky or something like that. Scully, later on, is speaking with, she sat down with Bill and Tara. And basically, they're talking about how happy they are about them having a child soon. And Scully sort of, you can tell in her face that she doesn't, this is later on, by the way, this is after this scene at the they're not at the crime scene.
Yeah,
that would be inappropriate even for this Christmassy delight. So they're talking later on at Bill's house, and they're talking about the kid, and Scully just doesn't look fully. She looks happy, but also like there's a bitterness to it, I guess. And obviously we know why, but no one else in the family does. So Scully leaves, goes into the kitchen, and her mom confronts her about this, and she basically admits that she can't conceive a child of her own after this abduction, which them talking about their kid definitely feels like heavy-handed rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah.
But it's just heartbreaking to see, and I think I'll go into this later as well. But I think Gillian Anderson in this episode knocked it out of the park. She was really, really good in this, especially later on with the adoption talks. I thought she was fantastic. Yeah,
and this is the emotional crux throughout this whole episode. This is the storyline that makes this episode work, because you've got this. Well, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. Now, this gives you this inkling that, is this why she was looking at the child?
Yeah.
And is this what was going through her head at the time? Because you've got this sort of admittance, and I think it's a little bit later on that she admits that she's never thought about wanting children until she was told she couldn't, and then she realised how much she did want children. And you've got this emotional sort of attachment to the fact that Scully just really wants to save this child, especially, and this is before she sort of gets the idea that a sister might be involved in some way. I think it's just like this maternal instinct of wanting to protect her. And you see that throughout the episode, which makes the final scene in the episode hit all that much harder.
I've read, there was something I cut out from last week's episode, and it basically, I had something spoiled for me in the production notes last week.
Okay.
And it was the ending of this episode. So the shock was less of a shock. I mean, it's still a shock, but anyway.
Yeah. It was a massive shock to me, I'll say that.
But they basically were talking about how last week's episode, the postmodern Prometheus, and some of earlier episodes in the series start hinting this about this maternal instinct in Scully. They start dropping this in there. And it didn't dawn on me until I was watching this, as it's happening. I was like, I guess kind of, they have been sort of dropping hints about, throughout the episodes going up to this, they have been dropping hints. It's just very subtle, to the point where...
Yeah, I'd not thought about that, but I think you're right. There's definitely the breadcrumbs there that you can see. And again, I like that, especially for repeat viewers. They're giving something that you can look into afterwards. I hadn't picked up on it, but of course I didn't realise it was going to be such a big plot point. Really interesting stuff.
So later that night, Scully has a dream, and there's a few different dream sequences in this episode, but in this one, we see Scully as a young child, and it's this is the first hint because it's the same actor as before, which I was like, is that again? I was like, that looks like the same actor. I'm not 100% sure. And it was only when I was looking at the casting later on, I was like, oh, okay, they did actually cast her in the same role, which makes a lot of sense.
Well, she plays Melissa, doesn't she?
I thought it was meant to be Scully in this dream. Scully finds the lunchbox.
Yeah, I think it's the girl on the stairs that she plays. It's Melissa, because it looks like Melissa, doesn't it?
Okay, I thought it was the same actor.
No, so the actress, well... I mean, it may be. I'm not sure, but I recognised the little girl as the girl on the stairs, and not the girl that played Scully. But then I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, we see that in this dream that she basically, I think it's hinted that she hid a pet rabbit. But we don't really know this. We just basically see her find a box. She opens it and it's just like hair and maggots. But yeah, in the synopsis when I was reading up on it, it basically says that she'd hid her pet rabbit and it had suffocated and died.
Yeah, because there's a young Bill that's telling her how he's going to make a rabbit stew and once he finds it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I assume that she's hid it. And, God, this is a horrific scene. This is awful.
There's a lot of that in this episode. The dream sequences, I mentioned it later on, especially during the one in the church. They're very Nightmare on Elm Street. And it definitely feels like that has an influence on how they film this, that they are obviously dreamlike and they have these sort of like nightmarish qualities to them. I thought they were really well done.
I agree. I was looking into, well, as I was going through with these dream sequences or like these sort of memories, I assumed that there was some relevance behind them. And there's one later on with them, their mother giving them, her and Melissa a present. And that's obvious. You can sort of figure out why that's important to Scully, why that's relevant to this moment in time. This one I had a little bit more of a tough time figuring out. And the only thing I could come up with when I sort of sat down and thought about it was, is it these maternal instincts from Scully in the sense of she wants to protect this rabbit so much that horrifically she ended up killing it, like hiding it away and putting it into a box that the rabbit couldn't breathe. And I wonder whether it was her, basically an analogy for her wanting too much to protect this thing that she owns or is looking after.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, it does track again these like sort of maternal themes and stuff in this episode. It does make a lot of sense when you bring it up, but yeah, I hadn't thought about that at all.
I can only imagine, because I feel like there's a reason why these scenes were chosen, and some of them you can tell, and some of them are a little bit more subtle. So I just thought that was really interesting. But it's great to see. I mean, also on top of all this, the person who plays, or the child actor that plays the little girl, and also plays Melissa. She's adorable. She's the most adorable little actress I've ever seen.
In the same dream later on as well, she encounters Emily as well.
Yeah.
So
it's Melissa, isn't it? Well, I suppose it's never really told, but we get a picture of Melissa as when she was a baby, and it looks exactly the same as Emily.
Yeah.
So I assume it's Melissa that's on the stairs.
That's the thing. Like, it's saying in the notes that it was Emily. I don't know. It's like,
I'm not sure. But yeah, I think because at this point you recognise her as Emily because you don't know what Melissa looks like, do you?
Yeah.
But then they do find the photo of Melissa later on in the episode, and it looks like they look exactly the same.
Yeah. Scully's woken up with another phone call, and the voice tells her to go to her. Not so subtle. She goes back to the Sim residence. But the father there, or the husband Marshall, says to Scully that no one was using the telephone at this point after she traced it. And as Scully looks behind her, she sees, she looks into the window. She sees two guys in dark suits sitting at the kitchen table, and this is the first hint that there's some kind of conspiracy behind this, which. Again, I thought, well, this is strange. Like, this is like a Christmassy episode, but it's a mythology episode.
That's the thing. I don't think even now it gets really explained what these guys are up to.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming in the second episode we'll get more information on that. But this doesn't look very legit. And the husband and the husband, I can't remember his name. Is it Marshall?
Marshall, yeah.
Yeah. Marshall's very jumpy and panicky when he's at the door.
Yeah. And if these are these kind of like agency men, you can understand why, especially later on when you find out what happens. The next day, Scully goes and requests for the evidence on this case. And she actually phones the FBI and requests information on her sister's case as well. While she's requesting this, the detective seems very happy that he solved this case. He's like, well, it's 100% this is a suicide. We don't need to do any more digging. We've got the answer. But as Scully points out, there's loads of discrepancies in this case. She notes that the phone was disconnected after the call. So the call was made to the police, and then she basically said, why would he disconnect the phone again? You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't add up. Also, she then goes and does an autopsy, finds that there's no medicine tablets, which they'd mentioned earlier. She was taking some kind of like headache medicine, which would have knocked her out. Yeah. They don't find any of these tablets in her stomach, and they also find a puncture wound on the heel of her foot, which she notes is meant to be missed. And this is her theory now, that basically she's been pumped full of this drugs, killed, and then they made it look like it was a suicide. Yeah, and I think this is the point where the detective... I like this, because the detective plays this sort of antagonist at the beginning, but then the evidence is put towards him, and he then takes on this sort of... He doesn't, like, fight against Scully. He takes on this almost Mulder-like role, where now we've got this Mulder fill-in, and he sort of... He hears the evidence and goes, actually, this doesn't make sense, and they start working together on the case. Yeah, it's very unusual, because usually it's... The police that they always seem to encounter are always fighting back with them on these cases, but in this case, he's sort of gone, okay, we are wrong, and exactly, trying to rectify it. They go to the Sim house. Saying Sim house makes me feel like it's The Sims, you know what I mean? And they search for any evidence, and they find a needle in the rubbish. Marshall says that that's Emily. She suffers from anemia, and she has to have these injections daily, which is kind of true. Later on, we find out, but also it kind of seems suspicious that he has this evidence. And I think they find later on that they do a blood test on it, and it was the mother's blood, wasn't it, on there? So they can link it back to him. Yes, yeah. Scully, in the meantime, has got something called a PCR test, which is like a kind of blood test on Emily. And she gets the results back and speaks to her mom, and basically says that at this point they believe there's a 60% chance that Emily and Melissa have a DNA match. So in this case, that Melissa is Emily's mom. I think I forgot to mention, this is probably a crucial point, they find out Emily is adopted. Yeah. and forgot to mention that. They've also found the picture, haven't they, where they both look very similar. Yeah. And so I think this is, again, it's so clever the way they filmed this. I don't mean to sort of like hype it up to more than it is, but I do really find this a very effective way of storytelling, because they've given you, again, I mean, it's hard to say without revealing the ending, so I'm just going to reveal the ending. Emily turns out to be Scully's daughter. Yeah. And that is such a genius twist, I thought, because they give you all the evidence for that being the ending of the story right at the start. Like, the whole episode's about Scully wanting a child. The whole episode's about Scully's maternal instincts. The whole episode is about how this kid has got a connection with Scully. But because they put this Melissa sort of face in front of you, and they keep on showing, oh, is this Melissa's? Is this Melissa's? I had no idea. Yeah. Like, all the way through, I just assumed, oh, I bet you this kid's got something to do with Melissa, even though it didn't make any sense. And all of Scully's family was saying, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense, because it's Scully's. Yeah. And I just thought that was a very clever way of storytelling, because all the story made sense, and they fooled me by just sort of, it was like a what you call it when you're like, a sleight of hand trick. Mm-hmm. I got tricked because I was looking over here when I should have been looking over here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do feel kind of robbed of the experience because I imagine if you already knew. Because I knew, I was like, yeah, none of the misdirection worked. But again, that's not the episode's fault at all. That's Wikipedia's fault for you. But yeah, so she has this DNA test, and she thinks that Emily is Melissa's daughter. She also says that there's a physical resemblance to them with this picture, as you mentioned.
Which looks identical.
It does,
absolutely identical.
And she also reminds her mom that in 1994, Melissa just went and disappeared, basically, where nobody knew where she was. And this would have matched with the time where where Emily would have been born. And it was also on the around San Diego. So again, that sort of tracks, all this sort of tracks at this point. But again, this is all just a red herring, because it's all the evidence seemed to point to that, but it's not the actual case. So yeah,
but they don't make evidence up either, because all the family basically like just turn around and tell all the reasons why this can't be the case. Even to the point where later on in the episode, Bill shows them a picture of her in 1994, and she's not pregnant in the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And us as the audience, we're trying to figure it out and go, oh, well, yeah, it could be. And even Scully as a character, well, there's other reasons, and we could be looking at this, could be looking at that, and she's stretching, whereas the real answer's right in front of us. And from my perspective, I didn't see it, and I thought that was very clever.
Yeah. I think the way it is written is very well done. Yeah, I can't fault it at all. Later on, Scully has another dream. This one, basically, we find her going to... She's at a funeral, basically, and Mrs. Scully gives... Scully, this is awkward, gives Dana the crucifix around her neck, or the crucifix necklace, which, again, becomes an important thing later on in the episode. It's just that sort of reminder, again, about this sort of connection, I think. Again, this is where it seemed very Nightmare on Elm Street. There's also a flashback later on. It's not in the synopsis, but there's a flashback, and it's Christmas morning, and basically there's two teenage... so there's teenage Scully, and there's a teenage Melissa talking about presents. There's not really any story beats in there, so I can understand why it was like left out of the synopsis. But it seemed... This was weird in and of itself, because I thought that the Dana that played her, this teenage Dana, was very... It didn't feel like Dana Scully, you know what I mean? It felt weird, and I don't know what that was, but especially when... I'll tell you later who the actor is who plays her, and it's like, oh, that how is it not matched up more, I guess? But you know what I mean? It felt weird. I don't know if you've thought anything about that flashback as well. Yeah,
I mean, I think because the present, it was their presents at the Christmas. They got the crucifixes, wasn't it?
Was it then? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And with the, so I couldn't really figure out the funeral scene, apart from it just being sort of just the shock of her, what's happening to her in real life.
Yeah.
But the crucifixes, definitely, I thought that is pretty sort of straightforward, where obviously it's talking about her faith, and it's also talking about her mother, which makes it's her mother, Scully's mother's protecting her and giving her this thing, and you can see Melissa, it doesn't really feel the same way as Scully when she receives it, but when Scully receives it, it's almost like this protection, like this, the faith that she's given her. And then that's mirrored, obviously, when Scully decides to do that for Emily. Even before she knows anything about Emily being her daughter, she decides to give her this. And again, how talking personally, obviously, I know you probably did see it at the time, but how did I not see that at the time when she gives her the necklace? And it's so obviously paralleled, and I didn't clock on.
Do you know what though? Like, I have the, it's kind of like a rewatch experience, because seeing it, I'm like, oh, it's this like quite emotional scene between a mother and her daughter.
Yeah, you can pick up on that. So it's interesting we've got the two different opinions.
Yeah. This is kind of what it'd be like if one of us had seen it before.
Yeah, I quite like that.
I don't want to do this all the time, though. I quite like not knowing. But yeah, I thought that the teenage Dana, I don't know, something about her actor just, I don't know, it just didn't click with me. But yeah, I'll tell you who the actor is later. And it's okay. So Scully wakes up and the detective informs her that there's basically been large payments to the suicide victim's bank account for the last 18 months. And they basically track this to a pharmaceutical company called Prangen Industries. There was also a bit in this because she's at the... I don't know if she goes to the precinct. I can't remember if she's on the phone to the precinct. And there's somebody being taken off into the back in handcuffs. And I was like, anytime I see that, I'm like, is that going to be somebody later on? I think it's Lost has reprogrammed my brain into expecting people to like always be part of the story. But I think it was just an extra who was led away. But yeah, so Scully and the detective go to meet this doctor at this pharmaceutical company, and he explains that Emily's she did have anemia, and she's part of a clinical trial, and basically the mother wanted to drop her from this program, but the company basically said that they'd give her money as a goodwill gesture to keep her a part of it. He also says that he prescribed these injections for the headaches to the father. So at this point now, they have a solid evidence that this injection had been used to knock her out. Later on, they go and arrest him for the wife's murder, and as a result of this, you basically see Emily being taken by social services, but before she's driven away, we get this scene which we've just been speaking about, the where Scully puts the cross around the girl's neck.
Yeah, it's very. When you know who this is, it's quite a touching scene where Scully basically just takes it upon herself to protect this girl,
even without knowing her as well. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I didn't like this. Wasn't like last week. But I sort of did get like sort of emotionally affected by this because I don't know what it is, but seeing like a kid being taken off by social services is just like heartbreaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's horrific.
Especially like, obviously, she shouldn't stay with her father for very good reasons. But it's just really sad to see, and especially knowing that this is a Christmas episode.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, this is very dark, very grim. But anyway... we find out that Marshall has basically confessed to the murder at this point in prison, and Scully is a bit confused by this because he had rock solid alibis stating that he was at this at the doctor's office. Yeah. So really, I don't understand why he'd confess, because he had a good case to pleads that he was not guilty. So she and the detective go to the jail to see. To basically speak to him and find out a bit more. And as they're driving in, she sees the two guys who were sat at his table from earlier and who were sat outside the house, basically driving away. And I think
you immediately know something's gone wrong here, don't you?
Yeah. I put in my notes, they pulled an Epstein on us.
It's Christmas, Luke.
Look, this Christmas special has gone down the pan quickly.
Okay.
So yeah, we go in and we find that he's allegedly committed suicide, but we all know that basically these two agents have set him up. Hence, they pulled an Epstein.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. I shouldn't put that on record, just in case. I don't know.
But next week's episode it doesn't come out because you've been taken away.
Yeah, I've been done. Anyway, we'll get to the crux of this episode now. It's this sort of like last few scenes. So Scully's talking to her brother about this guy being killed, and she says that he's been made to look like suicide. This is where she basically gets a call from Susan, the social worker from before, and we find out that Scully had actually applied for adoption of Emily.
I thought this was a bit crazy, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously there's this connection between them, and when you find out in the end, it kind of makes sense, and you can give them a pass on it. But like, I just thought to myself, why on earth? Like, you literally over the course of 4 hours, you can't just make this decision straight away. And like, and for me, I was like, if I was a social worker, I'd be like, not a chance. Like, you've only known her for hours, and you're making a snap decision. Like, that alone tells me you're not fit, because you just made the snap decision based on the last 4 hours.
Yeah. It does all seem very hasty. But, I mean, we find out that it's been rejected, and Scully basically goes on to sort of say how she's sort of doubting her career in the FBI. And she basically says that ever since her cancer scare, that she's started to think, maybe this isn't the life for me. Maybe I want to settle down and have a family and, you know, have a normal life, which I can completely understand. If this career you'd chosen had sort of led you down this path of self-destruction, essentially.
Yeah.
I can completely understand her just thinking, this isn't what I want my life to be. I just want my life to sort of be happy, I guess. So I can completely understand why she did this, but yeah, it's very hasty.
Yeah, well, even if you take all the sort of the conspiracy and like a top level job aside, this sort of near death experience can reprioritize your life, and you can decide that actually I prefer to put my personal life ahead of my career or my sort of professional life.
Yeah.
And so it's perfectly reasonable. I just think maybe file for adoption. Just don't file for the adoption of this one specific girl that you have arrested their father. You know what I mean?
I was going to say there's a lot of baggage there. Yeah.
But I mean, in the end, who needs adoption when you've got motherly rights?
The social worker says that she'll review the case before, you know, it goes to court or whoever has to sort of approve it. And then finally, it's quite easy to summarize this scene. But on Christmas morning, I think basically this is where, I think something else happens before this, where Bill is basically sort of saying to Scully that, I can't remember what he does, but there's like a bit before the courier turns up, isn't there? I can't remember exactly.
So I think earlier in the episode you get Bill showing Scully the picture of
that
her.
Was it, yeah. I think I'm getting those mixed up, yeah.
Basically, he's just saying that it's you've got to stop believing this and blah blah. But this scene, it's a typical your usual Christmas film scene where the entire family comes down,
that was it,
all together, all dressed up, all in high spirits, and they all just start like running under the tree, grabbing the presents.
Apart from Scully, who was asleep on the sofa, and everyone's just ruined her sleep. So yeah, they all come running in, and we get a knock at the door, and we find that it's a delivery from an FBI courier who won't even take the signature from Bill. He needs Scully's signature. And she gets the final DNA tests that she'd basically said she'd sent off for at the time that she'd got the original ones. And they confirm that that Melissa isn't the mother. They can categorically say that she's not the mother. And then, we get the final bombshell that it actually turns out that they tested it against somebody else because there was another match, or it was similar to another. And we find out that Dana Scully is Emily's mother. And
my jaw dropped to the floor. It's
the perfect ending, because they literally, that is like the last line of it, and it just cuts off and it's straight to the end, and it's like, as a shock, it is. Even like knowing the twist was coming, I was like, I can't believe they've done that. That's mental.
I really, really enjoyed that. The ending of this episode, I thought it was very clever all the way through. This just changes so much.
Yeah. I don't think any of us on our predictions from season 1 onwards could have predicted Scully would be a mom by season
to a 5-year-old.
Not what I was expecting. Then again, we weren't expecting Mulder to be potentially married in 1989. So I know there was a lot of talk of that, but we'll get to that later on. Overall, what did you think of this episode?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be a little bit darker. I thought it was going to be a little bit lighter, should I say, but it was very dark.
Yeah.
But I thought that contrasted well with this sort of, like I said, this emotional storyline of Scully with her sort of this sort of maternal instinct coming out. And now I'm just excited. Obviously, it's a little bit awkward to review this on its own as it's a part 1 of 2. But now I'm just excited to see what part 2, and I'm also excited to see what this means in the future now that Scully is a mom.
Yeah.
Does this change the way she works? What role is the daughter going to have? It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Unless there's a double twist and we find out that this is some kind of like setup or something like that. Who knows what could happen with this?
Oh, I do hope not. I don't. Scully doesn't need that in her life.
Yeah.
I want like a spin-off series like Little Scully, where like she's like solves Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and stuff like that.
Do you know how like they did? What was it, Young Indiana Jones?
Exactly. Exactly.
Teen X-Files. That's what you can do.
I'd love it.
I don't know if a teenager's qualified to join the FBI though, but so that might throw it off.
Yeah. We can work around it. We'll figure it out.
That's not believable in this world. A teenage FBI agent. But yeah, overall, similar kind of things. It's not what I was expecting for a Christmas episode. The fact that Mulder wasn't in it, that was a shock. Yes. And that it's a mythology 2-parter. I knew it was a 2-parter, obviously, because we mentioned that. But I thought it was just going to be some... I mean, it's obvious now when you think of it. If they're doing a 2-parter, it's going to be a mythology episode. So it's obvious, like, looking back. But at the time, you think, not a Christmas episode. So I think Gillian Anderson is... I think she's amazing in this episode. I can't think of a better word for it. I think her acting in it really does, because it's quite subtle in some parts. And yeah, how especially the scene where she's giving her the cross, I think that like it's very well done, because especially knowing it or not knowing it, you can get this connection between the two. And yeah, there's a lot of moments like that in this episode, and I really enjoyed Gillian Anderson's acting in it. I did think it was a bit light on the actual content in the episode, apart from the last 5 minutes and sort of, as we mentioned, that mystery of who's making the phone calls. So it is kind of hard to grade this one, because it kind of feels like you need to know the outcome of next week. So I've sort of,
I'd agree with that, to be honest.
It's a hard one to sort of rate for me, but...
Luke's production notes.
During the second week of October 1997, David Duchovny was unable to film as he was promoting his film Playing God. 1997. I don't know why it's given the year. I would assume it'd be the same year. So the producers decided to spend this week filming a Scully-centric episode. Given that this episode was slated to air in December of that year, writers Vince Gilligan, John Shaban and Frank Spotnitz initially tried to write a Christmas episode similar to the 1951 film Scrooge, with Dana Scully in the place of Alistair Sims' Scrooge. However, the three were unable to develop any more ideas, and so they decided instead featuring Scully being visited by earlier versions of her family members herself, resulting in the flashback sequences that pepper the episode.
Interesting.
I get the feeling they came up with the title first. And they're like, oh, shit, we've already pitched the title now. But yeah. The young actress who had originally been cast to play Emily had severe nosocomiphobia. Now, have you have any idea what that is a fear of?
Oh, nosocomi.
Nosocomiphobia. There we go. That's probably a better way. Nosocomiphobia.
No, I've got no idea.
It is an irrational fear of hospitals.
Ooh, okay.
Which was triggered during the filming of Emily, which is the next episode, so look out for some hospitals next time, guys. There's a spoiler. Because the actress could not be calmed down, the show's producers were forced to recast the role and reshoot all footage featuring Emily in Christmas Carol.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So the original Emily.
What can you do about that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. During the season's hectic shooting schedule, Gillian Anderson was unable to reshoot for the episode, resulting in Anderson's double being used instead. So I wonder if you go back and look, it's probably all behind the head shots at that kid.
I'd imagine so, yeah.
Casting director Corinne Mays had difficulty casting Scully's 1976 self, the teenage self, before executive producer Robert Goodwin proposed using Gillian Anderson's 14-year-old sister Zoe for the role. So,
oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. So the Scully, the teenage Scully is actually Gillian Anderson's sister.
Okay, interesting. I like that. I mean, you might as well use family if you can. It just gives that edge of realism, doesn't it?
Yeah, which is mental because I thought she was very uncharacteristically unlike Dana Scully, and it's like, well, she was basically a relation, so yeah, it's just weird. Prop specialist Ken Harrelly claimed the biggest challenge in producing the episode was finding Christmas paper from the 1980s for the flashback sequences. That's an interesting production note to have.
Hang on. Hasn't Christmas paper always been the same?
Apparently not in America, I guess.
I don't think this can't be an American problem alone. What's different with Christmas paper?
I don't know. Maybe it was.
I mean, obviously,
thinner?
like there's not going to be like I don't know Thomas the Tank Engine Christmas paper, is there? But you know what I mean. It's. I don't know. You assume you could just have one with stars on it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's always generic like I don't know. Maybe it was very different in the 80s.
There we go.
And finally, after production wrapped, Gillian Anderson said she was unsatisfied with her acting, stating, "I felt in the end I was a little low energy, a little too melancholy. It was hard to find the right attitude for Scully in dealing with a child that's apparently hers. To find the right flavour of relationship to her and this disease she's going through, all mixed up with the aspects of the paranormal." Anderson also admitted that another issue she had was that Scully had no history with Emily, so she was unable to play the kind of attachment I would feel if my own daughter Piper were going through the same thing. So yeah.
I thought her performance was great.
Yeah. We'll have to see if that's any more bearing as well on a second episode, but yeah. We shall see. That's the end of production notes this week. So, Critic Files.
It stinks.
Welcome to the Critic Files.
You know what? I think you hit the nail on the head. I really enjoyed this episode. And I think the ending alone makes me want to put it higher than I would have given it. But it really does need to be, I think it needs to be rated as part of a pair.
Yeah.
I need to see how the story ends before I start like going crazy on it. So I'm going to give it 7.5, 8, somewhere around that zone.
Yeah. That's not a bad score, to be fair. I rated it lower than... I rated it fairly low. I say fairly low. It's still a passing grade easily. I gave it a 6.5 just because I thought there wasn't a lot going there in the middle parts. I think the ending was huge, and I do think Gillian Anderson's acting was great in it. But the actual content of the episode itself, I mean, this retrospectively might look silly when I've watched next week's and I go, "Wow, that first part is needed to have this amazing second part." So it might get dragged up a bit, but on its own, it's hard to give it a strong score. But out there in the IMDb world, it did get a fairly strong score of 7.9 from 2,500 reviews, 2,575 to be precise.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I can definitely see. Again, that ending's got to have like, it's got to be the reason why a lot of people really like this. That is a huge reveal, especially for like what, the 5th, 6th episode or something like that.
I know. Yeah. We're in episode 6.
It's not like it's penultimate episode or anything. You know what I mean?
It's mid-series bombshells. Still got a lot of fallout from this to deal with, but anyway. Do we have any correspondence from the people?
Welcome to Dead Dan's Twitter Corner.
We do, yes. We've had quite a bit. I can just read a couple at random. Ray got in touch, and she was saying about Detour, our episode about Detour, and she put that this one's a Shippers episode. I'm the same as pardon me, and I'm one. I rated it about the same as your guys, 7.5. This episode reminds me of the X-Files episode Quagmire, which is, if you remember, the conversation where they get stuck on that rock in the middle of the lake.
It reminded me a lot of that episode, yeah.
I think it's those two conversations. I always think, I completely agree, and I always do enjoy the time where we see Mulder and Scully with downtime.
Yeah, because usually they're always just dealt with some earth-shattering knowledge that they have to tackle. So you never just see them just, in this case, camping.
Yeah, exactly. And when they do, you get to just, rather than talking about like their jobs, you get them just talking about the way they feel, or just even like little tidbits of the life. Do you know what I mean? I like to see that. On the same episode, Jen Shep has wrote in saying, I've always loved Detour, the goofy agents they're traveling with, the red-eyed creatures, adding, I found them terrifying and checked under the bed the first night I watched the episode. And the sleeping bag convo. Should I read the whole tweet again?
Nah, I reckon. Oh, yeah, maybe.
I'll just do it just in case.
Yeah.
And on the same episode, Jen Shep got in touch, saying, I've always loved Detour, the goofy agents they're traveling with, the red-eyed creatures. I found them terrifying and checked under the bed the night I first watched that episode. And the sleeping bag convo, which made my little shipper heart flutter back in 1997. So yeah, definitely a Shippers episode, this one. And you could definitely see why. And to be honest, I'm getting that more and more as the episodes go along.
Yeah.
Which also brings me on to our next tweet, which is good news for us. Green Elf got in touch and says, we are officially Shippers now. We get to be a part of this club, because we both said in the last episode that we both get into the stage now where we're like kind of just rooting for them to get together now, aren't we?
I mean, yeah.
I can see, you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I've never really, like the term shipping, like wanting characters to sort of get together. I've always, like, definitely when I've watched shows, there's definitely been like, oh, I'd love this character to get with this character or something. But I've never really understood the sort of the fandom behind it, or like not the obsession. That's the wrong word, but like the community all gathering in one place, wanting this one thing to happen. Until I've seen this show, and I can completely understand now why 5 seasons in you'd be desperate for these two to get together, and I do understand where it comes from now. Yeah,
see, with shipping with me, I've always associated it with, and I don't know if this is because it's from like, I've always heard the term in like, I've heard it with stuff like anime and games and stuff like that, and it's always like I ship two characters who are completely opposites, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem to fit the story, and I've always found the concept weird. This, as in X-Files, I'm like, they have to get together, you know what I mean? Like, this is, there's no way the story can go other than that. So with this, I'm like, yeah, I'm fully on board. Like, it has to go this way. But yeah, so I can kind of understand it in this sort of, series, or this show, I guess. So yeah, I finally understand that mindset. Before, it was just alien to me. I just didn't understand it. But yeah, I guess we're shippers now.
Exactly. I mean, that's the best part about it. We get to be a part of that club. Yeah. But you definitely can see how it became this sort of this fandom. Apparently, I can't find the tweet right now, but someone got in touch saying that the term shipping originated from the X-Files.
Yeah.
Or the X-Files community. And I can definitely see. I know what you're talking about, where it has become this. There's a lot of like cult show figures that want, like you said, two opposite characters, and they just decide that those characters work better together. But in this instance, I just think, yeah, there is this just sort of, it's because you know they're perfect for each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're forced to watch them not get together. It's such a weird feeling.
Especially with the dynamic of the show of just having these two as the main characters being a male and a female character. It's kind of like, it's Chekhov's relationship. You know it's coming. So yeah, I can, in this situation, like I said, you're willing it on because you know it's coming. You're just like, come on, we can all see it happening, so just do it, you know what I mean? But yeah, we're shippers. Well, that's the one thing I do want to know. I could probably Google it, but I just haven't. Mm-hmm. So the term shipping, I wonder where the ship part of it comes from. I don't know if the tweet mentioned that. Or if
it didn't, and I can't find the tweet for some reason. But what I will do is I'll find out where the term came from.
All right.
I've got no idea.
Answers on a postcard, please.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need our fans' help on this because I've just Googled shipping term meaning, and this is the answer that I've got. Who arranges for transport on the carrier? Who pays for transport? Where, when does title ownership of goods transfer from seller to buyer? I think that explains everything you need to know.
I think you've accidentally gone on nautical Google there. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So.
No, I do set that as my homepage. That's the thing.
Noogle.
But yeah, that's everything for this week. I've just picked a few at random. But yeah, do keep getting in touch. Let us know your thoughts on this episode and previous episodes. You can find pretty much on any social media at Most Unwanted Pod.
Cool. So next week, we are looking at the second part of this, entitled Just Emily. So I guess we find out more about Scully's daughter in this. It would make sense. What are your final thoughts? Final words on this Christmassy of Christmas specials? What will you say to the listeners?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Christmas continuing on next week. Yeah. I'm looking forward to finding out the second episode, and I just want to get to it right now.
Do you know what the saddest thing will be? Is if next week's episode has no Christmassy relation. There's no tinsel up, there's no trees.
Well, I mean, you don't take your decorations down straight away, do you? Everything's got to still be up over the next few days.
Well, we've got to hope. We've got to hope and pray. Bye.